Now that we have an underlying foundation of the effectiveness and feasibility of online AAC, let's talk a bit more about how we actually implement the technology. As we mentioned, modeling is incredibly important in the effective delivery of any AAC service. One way you can achieve modeling online is by using your main webcam to show your use of the same device, such as your iPad with the same app installed or a copy of the low-tech core board. An even better option, however, is to use a separate document camera to model your use of the same device. And in this way, you're not fighting for real estate on your main camera between your face and the device. It may be a bit more difficult to get a second dedicated device like a Tobii Dynavox I-Series or a PRC Accent series, but this is where computer software comes into play. For example, you can use software like the New Voice Pass software by PRC, or the Tobii Dynavox Snapcore software to model communication use on your own screen. Now, of course, you'll want to pair this with having your facilitator on the client's end model as well. You can determine if you want to use one hit or sequenced. For showing you a more variety of things, I'm going to pick sequence today, but you can always go back and choose a different one. And then you can choose how many your field is going to be. We'll pick one in the middle today. We'll do 60. Okay, so they want you to change the name of it. I'm just going to name it 1.0 for today as the test. And then we click OK. And there you go. You have your Unity board. So what you could do is present this in your session by sharing your screen, and then you're able to model the use of the device even though you don't have a device. So they're not going to be able to see your finger touching the screen, but that's okay. You know, you're going to be able to still model use of the language. Continuing on with how we get apps for trials, you can also try the free version of the app as a starting point. However, you should know that because of the reduced functionality, even just with some eliminating, say, speech output, the free version most likely won't be sufficient for your trials because you'll want all of the features available for your client to try out. Another option is to contact app developers on Facebook or check their website for formal request procedures, and that way you can get free and discounted versions of apps. I did exactly this with the Touch Chat app that I needed for the client we saw in one of the videos. I didn't want to spend $150 out of my own pocket, and the school was taking forever in getting me access, so I simply talked with the company and was able to get a free download because I'm an SLP. If you can't arrange this, you can also watch for sales, particularly around April and October, and that will get your AAC apps at a discounted price. You shouldn't have to break the bank to get a library of potential systems, but we also don't want to limit our clients simply based on cost. Next, let's discuss some potential barriers to implementing effective telepractice AAC sessions. The first is that you don't have the device or system that the client uses. There are several ways to get around this, including buying your own device, such as an iPad, discussing free downloads with app developers, and requesting loaner devices from manufacturers or lending libraries. Of course, we already talked about some software options if you're not able to get the actual device itself in duplicate. This is the example of the New Voice software or the Touch Chat editor. Another potential barrier is not knowing how to actually implement the device or system that your client is using. This essentially comes down to doing your research on the different systems out there. You can sign up for the often free trainings on how to use a given system and then practice as much as you can. It's really critical that we be good models of a device or system for our clients so that they can learn themselves how to use it. Finally, another potential barrier is not working with your facilitator to have them be your eyes and hands during the session. This goes back to having a good system of communication with the facilitator on what's expected of each person during the session. This can include an agreed upon lesson plan and strategies to help the client without stepping on anyone's toes. The next FAQ is, isn't an iPad with a robust app just as good as a dedicated device? This is a complicated question, and the answer is yes and no. So many of the apps that are now available for iPads have improved, not only in their availability and how we can get them, but their programming is better. They're using more robust programming for their language programs. But what they lack that devices have, dedicated devices, is durability and accessibility. For example, if you're using an iPad and your client needs eye gaze, that's not going to work. It's not achievable through an iPad. I also think it's worth considering that iPads can actually serve too many functions. And you get into this a little bit with high-tech devices, but it's easier to restrict access to certain things or just not use those features if the client isn't ready for them. If somebody's not using their device to turn on and off lights, you don't even need to access that part of it. But iPads are so easily seen as entertainment devices or just toys rather than specifically being a communication device. And that can kind of confuse clients, especially younger kids, like, oh, how am I using this? This is my communication device rather than this is, for me to watch YouTube. So the answer again is yes and no, because what device you pick really should be based on individual needs, not just a static answer of iPad yes, device no, or vice versa. It's really going to depend on what your client needs.